We all know what it feels like to show up in the world, sometimes confidently, sometimes not so much. We've all had moments where we've felt unseen or overlooked. But here's the truth. There's one thing you can do just once that will change how people see you and, more importantly, how they treat you. That one thing is setting boundaries. It's saying, I am worthy of respect and living it out every single day. Not just through words, but through action. When you set a boundary, you're not just protecting your time, your space, or your emotions. You're communicating something much deeper, that your needs matter, that your energy is valuable, that you deserve kindness, respect, and honesty. When you do this, when you set a clear, healthy boundary, everything shifts. People start treating you with the respect you've given yourself. They begin to notice that you are not someone to be taken for granted. You've drawn a line in the sand, and it tells them that you know your worth. And let me be clear, setting boundaries is not about being rude or selfish. It's about being courageous. It's about owning your story and showing the world that you are worthy of love, care, and respect. Now, here's the paradox. When you begin to set those boundaries, some people might push back. They might not like the new version of you. They might not be accustomed to seeing someone so strong, so sure of themselves. And that's okay. This isn't about their comfort, it's about yours. But here's what's beautiful. Those who respect you, who see your value, will rise to meet you. They'll treat you differently because you've shown them how. So my challenge to you is this. Start setting those boundaries today. Be brave, be unapologetic, and watch how, in return, the people around you start treating you with the respect, love, and kindness you've always deserved. It's not magic, it's just the power of knowing your worth and standing firm in it. Living your worth is one of the most transformative acts you can undertake in your life. It's about fully embodying the truth of who you are, your values, your passions, your uniqueness, and living from that place of self-respect and self-acceptance. Too often we live our lives through the lens of what others expect of us or based on the approval we seek from external sources. We allow our worth to be defined by the opinions of others, the success we achieve, or the validation we receive. But living your worth is about standing firm in your inherent value, independent of those external markers. When we talk about living our worth, we're referring to something much deeper than surface level actions or appearances. It's about recognizing that you are worthy without needing to earn it, without needing to prove it, without seeking permission. Your worth is not dependent on what you do, what you have, or who you know. It's inherent, it's built into your very existence. Living your worth means making choices that align with your core values, even when those choices are difficult or unpopular. It's about saying no to things that drain you, devalue you, or compromise your integrity. It's about stepping into your own power and trusting that you have the right to take up space in this world, regardless of anyone else's expectations or judgments. It's about walking into a room and knowing that your presence is enough, that you don't need to be anything other than who you are in that moment. One of the most important aspects of living your worth is self-acceptance. It means embracing all parts of yourself, the parts you love, the parts you're still working on, and even the parts you might feel uncertain about. We are often our own harshest critics. We nitpick at our flaws, regret past mistakes, and diminish our own strengths. But when you live your worth, you give yourself permission to embrace every aspect of who you are. You understand that your imperfections don't define you, they make you human. And your humanity is something to be celebrated, not hidden or minimized. Living your worth also means recognizing that you are deserving of respect, love, and happiness, not because you've earned it through actions, but because you are fundamentally worthy. You are deserving of healthy relationships, fulfilling work, and joyful experiences. But here's where it gets tricky. Often, we wait for others to give us permission to live our worth. We wait for someone to tell us that we're worthy of love, success, or happiness, but the truth is you are the one who holds that power. You are the one who can validate your worth, and when you start doing that, the world will respond. As you begin to live your worth, there will be moments when it feels like a struggle. You'll be tempted to fall back into old patterns of seeking external validation. You might even find yourself questioning whether you really deserve all the good things coming your way. But here's the beautiful thing. The more you live your worth, the more your internal sense of value will outweigh any external doubts or fears. It becomes less about convincing yourself and more about knowing that you are worthy, regardless of what happens. Living your worth also involves creating boundaries that honor your value. When you set healthy boundaries, you're saying, I value myself enough to protect my time, my energy, and my well-being. You're showing the world that you won't settle for anything less than what you deserve, whether it's in relationships, work, or self-care. People begin to treat you differently when they see you living your worth. They see you as someone who values themselves, and in turn, they start to value you more deeply. It's not about being arrogant or self-centered. It's about finding balance, the balance between recognizing your value and still being humble. It's about owning your greatness without shrinking in the face of it. Living your worth isn't a one-time decision. It's an ongoing practice. It requires self-awareness, courage, and compassion. And as you do it, you'll see how the world begins to reflect that same respect and value back to you. When you live your worth, you stop doubting whether you deserve happiness, peace, and love. You stop holding yourself back out of fear of judgment or failure. You start to make decisions that are in alignment with your truest self, and you let go of the need to conform to others' expectations. You embrace your uniqueness and trust that it is more than enough, and you inspire others to do the same. So live your worth every single day. Let your actions reflect your belief in your inherent value. Let your words express your self-respect, and let your presence in the world be a testament to the beauty of embracing your own worth. Being courageous is not about being fearless. It's about acknowledging fear and choosing to act in spite of it. Courage is often seen as the ability to take bold, dramatic actions, but it is so much more than that. It's about showing up for yourself and others even when it feels vulnerable or uncertain. It's about standing firm in your truth even when the world around you feels like it's pushing against you. Courage is about having the strength to be authentic and to speak your truth, even when you don't know how it will be received or what the outcome will be. At its core, courage is the willingness to embrace uncertainty. So much of life is filled with unknowns, and it's easy to become paralyzed by the fear of what could go wrong. We live in a world that often encourages us to play it safe, to stick to the tried and true, to avoid risk at all costs. But courage is about leaning into the unknown, trusting that you have the resilience and inner strength to handle whatever comes your way. One of the most important things to understand about courage is that it doesn't have to be a grand, dramatic. Courage shows up in the small, everyday moments. It's in the decision to speak up when your voice trembles. It's in the choice to say no when it's easier to say yes. It's in walking into a room where you might feel like an outsider and owning your space with confidence. Courage is not always about moving mountains. It's about taking the first step, no matter how small, toward the life you desire. Being courageous means choosing to be vulnerable. Vulnerability often gets a bad rap in our culture. We're taught to shield our weaknesses, to protect ourselves from rejection or judgment. But vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of immense strength. It's the courage to show up as you truly are, without armor or pretense. It's about being open even when you don't know how others will respond. And it's through vulnerability that true connection happens. We connect with others not because we've built walls around ourselves, but because we've dared to let others see who we truly are. Courage also involves the willingness to fail. Failure is often seen as something to avoid at all costs, but true courage is found in the willingness to fail and still keep going. When we avoid failure, we often avoid growth. We avoid learning, we avoid taking risks, and we avoid stepping outside of our comfort zones. But it is in failure that we find our greatest lessons. Courage means accepting that failure is part of the process and that every misstep is an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Let's also talk about the courage to stand alone. One of the most challenging forms of courage is the ability to stand by your values and beliefs, even when others may not understand or agree with you. It's easy to go along with the crowd. It's easy to conform to societal expectations or to follow the path that others have laid out for you. But true courage is about creating your own path. It's about honoring your truth, even when it means stepping away from what is familiar or comfortable. Standing alone is not about isolation. It's about aligning with your integrity, regardless of what others think or say. Courage is also about setting boundaries. It takes immense courage to protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being. Boundaries are often seen as a way to protect ourselves, but they also signal to the world that we value ourselves enough to draw lines in the sand. Setting boundaries requires us to be courageous enough to stand up for what we need, even if it's uncomfortable. It requires us to be brave enough to say no when we'd rather say yes, to step back when we'd rather step forward. Another key aspect of courage is the willingness to speak your truth. So often we hold back our words out of fear of judgment, conflict, or rejection. But true courage lies in the ability to express ourselves authentically, even when it feels risky. Speaking your truth can mean saying the hard things, expressing your feelings, sharing your experiences, or confronting injustices. It means standing up for what is right, even when it feels like the odds are against you. And when you do this, you create space for others to do the same. Courage also means embracing change. Life is constantly evolving and change can be uncomfortable, but it's through change that we find growth. It's through change that we evolve into the next version of ourselves. Courage is about embracing the unknown and trusting that change, even though it may be uncomfortable, is a necessary part of the journey. It's about facing the challenges of life with resilience, knowing that you have the ability to navigate whatever comes your way. One of the most interesting and at times challenging realities we face when we begin to set boundaries and live with authenticity is the paradox of pushback. The idea is simple. When you begin to honor yourself, to draw clear lines in the sand, to assert your needs and desires, you will often encounter resistance. But here's the paradox. The very act of standing in your truth, setting boundaries, and living authentically is not just a declaration to the world about how you want to be treated. It's also a mirror. It reflects back to others their own discomforts, expectations, and sometimes even their unmet needs. And for some people, this reflection feels like an attack, a challenge, or a disruption of the status quo. The paradox is that when you begin to live with a greater sense of self-respect, others may react by treating you differently. Some will embrace your boundaries and the clear message they send, but many will push back, test those boundaries, or even try to manipulate you into returning to old patterns. It's easy to feel disheartened in these moments. After all, we want to believe that when we set healthy limits, people will immediately respect them and by extension respect us. However, the reality is that pushback is a natural part of the process, and it's important to understand why it happens and how to navigate it with grace and resilience. The first layer of this paradox is that many people have become accustomed to you, the version of you that people could rely on, the version of you that was always available, always accommodating, always people-pleasing. When you shift and begin to assert your boundaries, they may experience discomfort. You've disrupted the dynamic, you've shifted the balance, and suddenly they might feel threatened, confused, or even angry. This is especially true for people who have taken advantage of your previous willingness to ignore your own needs in favor of theirs. In those moments, they may push back because they are faced with the reality that they can no longer rely on you to always put them first. But here's the key. This pushback isn't necessarily a reflection of you or your worth. It's a reflection of their own discomfort with the changes you're making. It's about them adjusting to a new version of you, one that honors its own needs and limits. When you start setting boundaries, you're not just inviting respect, you're also challenging other people's behavior. You're giving them the opportunity to grow, to honor their own boundaries, and to rethink how they interact with others. But many people resist change. They may not even be aware of how they've been treating you or why your boundaries are so important. Their initial reaction to your changes may be negative because it forces them to question their own behavior, beliefs, and expectations. Another aspect of this paradox is that the pushback may not always be overt. Sometimes it's subtle, passive-aggressive comments, guilt-tripping, or emotional manipulation. In these cases, the pushback feels almost like an invisible force, something you can't directly confront, but can still feel in the tension. It's not always easy to recognize when someone is pushing back in covert ways. But recognizing it is important because these subtle forms of pushback are often the hardest to navigate, especially if you're trying to avoid conflict or confrontation. The truth is, these subtle forms of resistance can be just as powerful as direct opposition. When you confronted with guilt-tripping or passive-aggressive behavior, it can feel like you're being emotionally manipulated or made to feel like you're in the wrong for asserting your needs. And here's the thing about pushback. It doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something wrong. In fact, it could be a sign that you're doing something very right. It means that you're challenging norms, expectations, and long-held patterns, both in your relationships and in the world around you. By setting boundaries, you're inviting growth, not just for yourself, but for the people around you as well. The pushback is often the space where growth happens. It's the discomfort that precedes the shift. It's the tension that tells you you're doing something meaningful and transformative, both for yourself and for those around you. The pushback also comes from a place of fear. For some people, the idea of you setting boundaries and living authentically triggers their own insecurities or fears. They may fear losing you, fear that your boundaries will make them feel rejected or unloved, or even fear that your changes will expose their own lack of boundaries or personal growth. But this fear, while real for them, is not your responsibility to manage. It's their work to do, not yours. The key is recognizing that fear is often at the root of pushback, fear of change, fear of loss, fear of being left behind. Understanding this allows you to hold firm in your boundaries while still holding compassion for the other person's emotional reaction. Now, here's where the paradox gets even more interesting. The more you stand firm in your boundaries and continue to live authentically, the more others will begin to either align with your values or fall away. The pushback is often temporary. People will either respect your boundaries and grow alongside you, or they will struggle and withdraw. This is not a reflection of your worth, but rather a natural consequence of your evolution. Those who truly value you will respect the changes you're making and the healthy limits you're setting. They will appreciate the clarity and honesty that boundaries bring to a relationship. Over time, the pushback fades. What was once uncomfortable becomes part of the new dynamic. Those who remain in your life will adapt to your boundaries. They will learn to communicate with you in ways that honor your needs, and your relationships will deepen in authenticity and respect. The people who were uncomfortable with your boundaries may start to shift their own behavior as they realize the importance of boundaries in their own lives. So the paradox is this: pushback is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're creating space for growth, both for yourself and for those around you. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also necessary. It's the catalyst for change, the signal that you're moving away from old, unbalanced patterns and stepping